I'm so pleased to have everyone here today with us. We have been working on this topic of supporting children with incarcerated parents with a number of wonderful partners. And
Don't know how we let them know we're in this. So
oh, sorry, if you're speaking, we can hear you and you're in. um, so we're so glad to have so much interest today. You know, as many of you all probably know already, young people and children can often be like a secondary consideration when it comes to a parent's incarceration. And we appreciate your interest in trying to figure out ways that we as a state, we in our communities can better support children who have had that experience or who are going through that experience. Today, we're going to hear from some community partners that are doing work on supporting kids and learn some research-backed ways that we can all contribute to supporting children. We're also going to hear directly from people who have been through this, experienced this issue about what helped them and what they would have liked to have had more help with during that time. I'm going to just have a couple reminder notes before we get too far underway. For those of you who are seeking social work CEUs, we are going to put a link in for a survey at the end of the webinar, and it will not be included in the recording, so you will need to stay on for the whole webinar and complete that brief survey at the end to be able to receive the CEUs. And another reminder for folks before we get started, we are going to have time at the end for questions and answers with our panelists and the partners that are on the call. So if you have any questions that come to mind as we're going, please drop them in the chat and we're going to collect those, and that will be how we talk through the questions that you all have and have some opportunity to engage in some discussion. So I'd like to say a special thank you to the Kentucky Social Welfare Foundation. They have supported this webinar and have supported our work at Kentucky Youth Advocates to improve visiting practices across the state. And we also want to thank Aetna, who supported the guide that our partners, the Louisville Family Justice Advocates, put together. I'm going to turn it over now to Emily McKenzie, who is with the Kentucky Social Welfare Foundation, for some opening remarks.
Hi, thanks to KYA and Tara for giving me some time. I'm just going to talk really quickly about the foundation. We were very happy to collaborate with KYA and help fund this project, and are very pleased to have the audience that we have today to encourage others to receive funding from us as well. So like she said, my name is Emily McKenzie. I am the vice chair of the Kentucky Social Welfare Foundation. We are a charitable foundation that was founded in 1948 by a Kentucky social worker by the name of Martha Davis. We are governed by our board of trustees, which is made up of social workers like myself and lots of other interested citizens across Kentucky. What we do is we distribute grant funds to Kentucky nonprofits, and we have 2 grant cycles per year. We do one in the spring and one in the fall. And we tend to prioritize rural areas, but we do provide grant funding to organizations all over the state, including the more urban areas as well. So we tend to focus on organizations that are expanding their scope or implementing new projects. So like the KYA project was a new, really exciting project that we funded because we just found it so innovative. And so the more ongoing operational costs are not really our focus. We really want to get in with those organizations that are doing new, interesting things. So our mission in general is pretty broad, and I think that that's on purpose because we know that so many nonprofits are providing such a wide variety of services and programming to improve the lives of Kentuckians. So we didn't want to be too narrow in our focus. So to give you a little bit of insight on the type of funding that we provide, in the last 5 years, our grant awards have been anything from $1,000 up to $34,000. So there's a wide range that we can award, and the average grant award is around $10,000. So keep in mind, we've been around since the 40s. So our total grant awards are very, very high, but I can tell you that Since just 1991, we have provided a total of $3.4 million in grants to Kentucky nonprofits. So if you are interested, please feel free to go to our website. I am going to, I'll put it in the chat after I'm done here. It is kswf.org, and you can peruse our information. We have lots of really good info on there, everything from an interactive map to show you who's gotten funding in the past, to an FAQs and tips and help page. So if you've got questions, they can probably be answered through our website. You'll just create or complete a quick screening process to see if you're eligible, and then you complete the application. We do ask for your 501c3 IRS determination letter, an agency budget, and then a pretty specific project budget. We like to be really specific with what we're funding. So those are the three main documents that we will ask for. And our next deadline it's coming up, so it might be a pretty quick turnaround, but our next deadline is April 19th. So that's coming up pretty quickly, and then our fall application will open probably in late May or early June. So like I said, I'll put the website in the chat, and then if you have questions after looking at our website, you can feel free to email me, and I'll put my email in the chat as well.
Thank you so much, Emily. So if anybody has any great ideas while you're listening, you might want to think about reaching out and applying. I'm going to turn it over now to our partners at the Louisville Family Justice Advocates. We have Sharmika Wallace and Judy Jennings. We're going to talk about the impact on children and families and some other important information about how to support children.
Excellent. Well, good afternoon. So glad to be here with you all. My name is Sharmika Wallace. My experience has been as a social worker. I'll start there. I was a participant of the Public Child Welfare Certification Program with Spalding University, and that's kind of where my career started. And as a social worker, during those years, just, those past experiences of seeing how challenging it was for families to maintain their visitation with their children and the children maintaining contact with their parents sometimes it was an easy fix, sometimes it was not. And I think the things that we need to keep in mind as stakeholders is that parents still have parents that do have their parental rights. They have the right to know about their child's physical and mental well-being. They have the right to visit and maintain contact with their child, of course, if it's deemed appropriate. And then we also have to keep in mind that, parents need to know their responsibilities. So, of course, still being supportive of your child in the place of wherever they are receiving care, and actively communicating with the social workers, which sometimes that created a barrier, but, communicating with social workers and child caregivers to know what's going on with your child and to request that visitation. So this concurrent planning can be done with the help of like the CPS worker, the child's attorney, and maybe even the parent's attorney, because we want to always see families stay connected if it's appropriate. And so, as I transitioned kind of away from that type of work in the field, I spent a lot of time connecting with Louisville Family Justice Advocates, and was on a special team called the Special Project. And we actually went into the waiting room or the visiting lobby of the jail, and we did art with children while they were waiting to visit their loved ones. And so we kind of used the principle from Harvard University. It was the Center of Developing Child, and they came out with three main principles to improve health outcomes for children and families, to kind of guide the communication in the jail process. And so number one was definitely support responsive relationships through the quality visits and the communication. And then strengthen the core skills. So with reading or art making, in visitation programs, that's essential. And finding a way to reduce stress, so providing a safe and very calm space for the visitation to take place. So I'll let Judy kind of pick up from here.
Okay, thank you, Shamika. She's always wonderful speaker. Um, and any questions you all have is you can put in the chat for her or me with Louisville Family Justice Advocates. I wanted to talk a little bit more with you. Oh, I wanted to thank all of you all for being here. It's so amazing that you're here, and it's so important that we talk about the impact of incarceration on children, especially parental and families. So thank you so much for coming out today and knowing that you're part of the solution, that just to see those children and talk about how we can support them better. And so what I'm going to talk about a little bit is the Harvard um, Center for Child Development tool on communications about talking about toxic stress, which that connects in with the last point of the three principles of the Harvard Child Development, which is reducing stress. I just wanted to say, like, we're not saying Harvard because they're Ivy League. We're saying Harvard Center for the Child Development. This is really practical. The tools and language that they're developing, and I really encourage everyone to go to their website and look at both the three principles, which are early childhood, but they're the same as through life, and also the communications toolkit, because sometimes I think those of us who are working in different sectors like policy change, social services, we're talking about the same thing, but in different languages sometimes. And so I think if we all can see the impact we're really trying to make, reducing stress and for children and families, and like that's pretty simple language, and how are we doing that together? So the communications toolkit is especially important too, because wow. So we started this special project in 2008, and we were in the lobby till 2020. So over that 12 years, people didn't even know about the ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. Those were researched and established in that time period that we were there, which is really great because it shows the impact of stress and how stress can cause both mental and physical problems. Can, just that's the real big word. But when I go back and look at data, sometimes, as one person said, it looks like if you have an incarcerated parent that you also have a life sentence, because people are gonna. There's too much there's too much language about the harm that you can almost think it's too late or you can't do anything about it. And that's far from the truth. So stress is stress. And if you can reduce it at any time, it's going to help people. And we really need to have in mind as our advocates that the children are really able to thrive, and they have a thrive. They're here. So we want to be really careful about our language. And just two simple things that the Harvard Communications Toolkit talks about is just saying toxic stress uh, can cause health problems later on. Not that it will cause, not that these people are already won't be able to recover, because we know that there is a lot of resilience. Just a quick thing about stress. I know that's kind of a all over word, a big word. I mean, it encompasses a lot, but the Harvard three principles and the communication tools point out that stress is not just for individuals. Individuals carry stress, but stress comes with poverty, stress comes with racism, stress comes with social, with violence. Living in a community with violence will cause stress. So stress is at every level. It's at individual, family, and community. So we have to really act together to be able to address stress for everyone at once. We can't sector one group out and say, okay, you're not going to have stress, but these people are. So we have to really think of how we're working on the individual, social, and community level. And we can talk more about the community level later if you want at the end. So just two simple things that you can do is when you talk about the stress that children that have incarcerated parents or divorced parents or under any of the ACEs, be really careful that you're saying can or may, but not that it's the done deal. That you want to really be sure that we say these children can thrive and are thriving, and so we want to help that with their families. And also at the community level, what are we doing at the community level that's causing stress? And we know that even though we were only in the lobby one day a week, Sunday night from 5 to 7 every Sunday night, we were a calm and organized and positive place for the children to be in the visiting lobby. And we were there every Sunday. So no matter what you're doing, if you do it regularly with positive actions, it's going to make a difference. It really is. So there's nothing too small or too costly that we all can do together if we think about how we can support children with incarcerated parents.
Thank you, Judy. Now we're going to hear from some people with expertise on this issue, either from their childhood with experiencing a parent incarcerated or as a parent themselves who was incarcerated. And we know from previous work that actually was supported by the Kentucky Social Welfare Foundation, when we surveyed people across the Commonwealth, that experiences can look very different based on where you live in the state and how that local jail operates. But today we have DeQuante, Jacoby, Carla, and Eric who are going to share some of their perspectives and their experience. So if you all can just jump on and unmute, I'm going to ask a question maybe. I hope we had some technical difficulties. Hopefully Quante was able to join and hear us. But I was going to start with a question for Quante and Jacoby. I was interested in hearing and having you all share a little bit about what helped you most when you were experiencing the incarceration of a parent. What helped you get through that time?
I feel like the village, honestly, the village around me, everybody, Wiseman once said, it takes a village to raise a child. And I feel like without the rest of my family, I wouldn't be in the position I am today. So I thank my family, indeed.
Thank you, Jacoby. And Quante, were you able to join? He was on earlier and had technical difficulties. So I might switch that question over to Eric and Carla. What about you all from the perspective of being the parent in the situation? What helped you get through that time?
I'll go ahead and go. Probably having the phone conversations helped a lot to keep that connection. And I didn't always, because of work, the schedules, it was really hard to do visitation with my son, though I would try to go. And there just really wasn't, I mean, at the time my son was like 3 years old, so it was very difficult, when we had to sit or stand in long lines and wait. There wasn't really anything for the children. There was one jail that we had visitation with his dad that did contact visits, sort of. I mean, you sat in a room, there wasn't a glass. And that was really good because he was able to hold the baby and that kept a bond between them. So those were really good when it wasn't with the glass, but that was the only one. Lewis County was the only jail that I encountered that with. He was in probably 5 or 6 jails across the state. So.
And for me, I was the incarcerated parent. So, at first, the first part of my incarceration, I didn't get hardly no contact, and then I was fortunate enough to be sent off into rehab, And that's whenever I started getting that contact. And they had set up visitations for us to do it at a library. And I found that was a lot easier to connect, especially with my smaller children, just because there was activities there that I could engage engage with them. You know, it wasn't. It was actually me being the one being able to engage with that. And a lot Tara said, you know, and I think we spoke about it earlier last week. You know, with I'm fortunate enough now that I do work in a mental health field. But and I've been able to be part of what we got at our jail, which is Wonderland of Hope, and just being able to see, um, you know, how children react to that. You know, made me realize what I was doing then. I was doing it without even realizing I was doing it. Was interacting well, and that's very important. And it helped me build the relationship that I have with my kids today. You know, they'll still say, "Dad, will you read to me?" You know, or will you sit down and draw with me, or we'll play school or something like that. So it's very important, especially to. I know also I'm certified to do nurturing parents and fathers classes. So now I really see the backside of that, and how important it is, like for uh, the parents to be in these children's life. You know, especially the kids that's been ripped out of their life and thrown in foster care. It's important that they have that. You know, they know that their parents is there. You know.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I think it's so interesting to hear, just even with each of you, 3 examples. We have 3 very different experiences with what was helpful, and it sounds like different experiences with how much contact you were able to have. And Jacoby, I was going to kick it back to you. So perfect. I'd be interested to hear, like, how were you able to stay connected with your parent?
Through letters, because you know I was raised by my grandfather, and him and my mother didn't allow me to go up there to see him because they didn't want to see like a 10-year-old to get that scenery, you know that. So I understand them, you know, but through letters, and another coping skill that helped me was sports as well. Like I played a lot of sports, and that definitely got me through it. Got me through the time loss, basically.
Yeah, that's really important to call out. Like, what are those supports that helped you navigate that? And so being connected in activities, after school activities and things like that, that
Yeah.
kept you busy during that time, maybe connected with positive adults.
Indeed, indeed. So
And
Could I add something?
mhm.
Sorry, let him go ahead. He was saying something else.
no, I'm done. No, you can go ahead.
Sorry. I looked for the little hand raised, but I didn't see it. I just wanted to add, like, I taught IOP for a while early in my recovery, and something that I really noticed a lot of is women are a lot more included in parenting than what men are. And in working with some of the men in my IOP class, I had one that told me, you know, that his son was just better off without him. And something I've learned over the years since around 2018, 19, is dads aren't included, and dads don't realize the importance of their role. Like nobody's educating them or encouraging them. And I mean, though both parents, you know, incarcerated need that interaction with their child, but I think it's very important that we realize that dads don't get the same invitation that mothers get. And that, like the guy in my class, he told me, well, my son's just better off without me. Look at me, you know, look what I've done with my life. But I mean, he was in classes and he was trying to do better, but he still saw that his son was better off without him in their life because that's what he had been told all the time. And so I think it's really important that we recognize that dads really need that invitation.
Indeed.
And I
Honestly,
think, oh, go
I
ahead,
want,
Jacoby.
yeah, I want to kick off on that because, you know, honestly, I feel like that in that situation, the if the parents are apart, I feel like that 50-50 and 50-50 coverage would definitely help. You know, the what is it, 50-50 in the law, what's
Custody are you thinking of
custody?
custody? Mm-hmm.
So they both have 50-50 and they can share each side with one, but each parent, you know. But that's what I'm kind of dealing with, you know. So I feel like it'll make things a lot better because, of course, the mothers and the women have, you know, the right, not the right, but the right, you know. But I just feel like that 50-50 is definitely important in all situations if the parents are split apart.
Yeah, it's very important for, sorry about that, for mothers to be informed of the damages it causes when they talk, you know, down to the kids about the father, and, you know, vice versa. You know, I think that's very important too, to, even if you don't get along and you didn't have a good break, it's important to encourage and support each other in trying to co-parent. And we don't focus on that a lot.
Indeed, the teamwork makes the dream work.
Mm-hmm. Yes, looking at what the child needs and trying to put that front and center. It can be hard sometimes, but that's important to do. Um, I wanted to share just quickly, Clarissa, maybe you could go ahead and drop that link in for the guide that's geared towards caregivers, because as you all heard here, things looked different based on the family and what the family thought was appropriate. And that can be and should be, you know, a family decision that factors in everything. But we had put together, with support from the Social Welfare Foundation, a guide that caregivers can consider when they're deciding about visiting, and maybe preparation for young people as they're getting ready to go and see a parent, and then follow-up conversations. Or it might be other ways to communicate and maintain some connection if visiting isn't a good option at that time. Eric, I wonder if I can kick it to you to share a little bit about maybe about Wonderland of Hope and the work you're doing now. It sounds like you had some pretty amazing visiting options in the grand scheme of things. And I say this in the context of knowing kind of how little many places in Kentucky offer, but being able to connect with your child at a library and in a comfortable setting. Maybe you can share a little bit about Wonderland of Hope and how they set that stage for that connection to occur.
I think that maybe I don't want to overstep my boundaries, so Wendy may talk a little bit more about that. And I'll just tell you a little bit about what I do now and how that we and Wendy met. We have a grant. I can't remember exactly who it was through, but we have a grant that allows peer support specialists to go into the jail and do peer support classes with a women's recovery cell and a men's recovery cell. And, you know, through that, and actually Wendy and my boss, they come up with this amazing idea and they started this Wonderland of Hope thing, and it is awesome. It gives the opportunity for the kids to actually see their parents instead of just being over a video call and have that interaction with them. So it is great. But with my experience too, you know, and with the father's thing also, is that's like whenever my oldest child got took from her mother, and just because even though I had been in recovery for like 3 years, working in recovery and doing everything right, they did not want to allow me to take my child at first, even though that she wasn't safe with her mother. But it took me a lot of, had to call some people that I knew in order to actually take her that night. And it took several hours to do all that. So, I mean, I totally get what the other two is saying about the father thing, because it is looked down upon, I feel like, and there's a stigma to it. But yeah, the Wonderland, I don't want to step on Wendy's toes with the Wonderland of Hope. I don't know what she's got plan to talk about or whatever. And if she don't, then I don't care to jump back in and share a little bit more about it, but I just don't want to get too far into it, if you don't mind.
That's totally fair. Wendy, why don't you share a little bit about Wonderland of Hope? And then I'd like to return to that piece that you were talking about briefly around custody and what, Sharmika shared earlier with us a little bit about the social welfare system and how decisions in that system can have impacts on how kids and families can interact and or not. And sharing a little bit. Wendy, I know you have some of that experience and context from the community setting as well. So let's circle back to that after hearing a bit about Wonderland of Hope.
Okay. I just want to let you guys know my office is in a school, so if you all hear the bell, I will pause and let that finish ringing. So I first started going to the jail, Kentucky River Regional Jail here in Perry County in 2018. At the time, we didn't have the recovery cells, and I was only working with the women. So I would go in and do parenting classes with them. Fast forward, we did get recovery cells, and now I'm able to work with the men and the women. And then in 2020, we started I don't know if it was 2020 or 2021 that we started the visiting program, but our lobby of our jail has been closed since COVID, so the only visits that actually happen in person are through Wonderland of Hope. So the incarcerated person fills out a visit request form, and then they have to sign a release form through DCBS, and we vet the visits and make sure that they're safe and appropriate. And then they also have to be doing what they're supposed to be doing within their recovery classes. They have to be on good terms with the jail and their peer support. Once everything is okay through DCBS, through the jail, we do go forward with visits if the caregivers allow it, and they bring them there. We have the lobby set up really kid friendly, but since we are closed, our lobby is closed, we're able to do that. I feel like if our lobby were open to the public all the time, I don't know that it would be as child friendly. So the visits are through a glass, but they read a book together, and we try to keep it kind of light. We don't like to get into, any kind of really deep topics. But a lot of times the kids are little, so it's easy to avoid those, really deep topics. And then the peer support is available if they do get into something deep or if they have hard feelings to deal with after or before, to kind of support the incarcerated person through that. We do expo markers so they can do art on the windows together while they're visiting. And then, like I said, they read books. And then we'd like to do some kind of little arts and crafts or something eventually. But I've seen a lot of good things come from it.
And also, I just got something to show. So this is some of those things that we do with individual sales too. It's just we do this stuff, and through Save the Children has been able to help us with this too, with getting material and stuff. So
yeah, they are so creative and can come up with a lot of good ideas. They just need the materials to work with. So we do art therapy and materials for that. We've done letter writing before. And then I do parenting sessions with different recovery centers in the area, as well as drug court.
Thank you all for sharing a little bit about what that program looks like. I think got some positive feedback in the chat. Of course, I get inspired every time I hear about it. I was wondering if anybody would like to share a little bit about what the child welfare system processes might look like and navigating that. Wendy, I know you shared that you do check with DCBS, but Carla, if you would like to share anything further on that, or maybe what it might mean with court orders around visiting and what's helpful, what can create some challenges.
I wanted to add something about their art stuff. It made me think about some things that I did. I wasn't allowed any contact with my kids. I mean, I wasn't incarcerated, but I wasn't allowed a phone call or anything with them for a year. and I had lost custody for 35 months. But during that 1 year of no contact, I worried a lot that my kids would think that I moved on without them or that I forgot about them. And so I started, like when I would get sad and missing my kids, I would pull out pictures of them. And like it was on an app, like on my phone, but it was kind of like scrapbooking. I would look at old pictures that would bring back happy memories to lift my spirits. And then I started making these collage things, um, where I would just like put quotes and stuff and put pictures of my kids with their names, or like the bond between a mother and son, bond between a daughter and mother. And I would make those and I would send it to the caregiver and ask her to show them to my kids to let them know that I was thinking of them since I couldn't speak to them. So I think art's a very good way to express and turn negative emotions more positive, and also a reminder for the kids to remember, or to know that they are being remembered, even if they don't understand why they can't see or talk to their parents.
That's neat.
So as far as like the DCBS goes, I work with DCBS doing peer support now, and I also sit on some state councils, working with like the trusted advisors council, um, with the commissioner and stuff, and with Kentucky Seat, which is through Kentucky Youth Advocates. And I have a lot of good things to say about those at the top, but in my personal experience, they have some great ideas and they are implementing some great things at the top, but somewhere down the ladder, it's getting lost and nobody's following up on these implementations to ensure they're carried out. And then another issue is parents, they don't know who to turn to. Like I'd never had a case before with DCBS. I didn't have a criminal record. I was a registered nurse until the same month I lost my kids. Um, so I'd never been in the system. I didn't know who to talk to, who to turn to, what my rights were, what court processes looked like. I think my last day working as a nurse was like December 16th, 2016, and I lost my kids the day after Christmas that month. So it kind of all fell apart. And a lot of it began with alcohol for me. I'd been sober like 5.5 years and relapsed drinking because it was legal. And I would just binge drink like after work or on the weekends or something when I wasn't working. And that turned into some alcohol charges, drinking and driving, and eventually a child endangerment charge, drinking and driving. But it was all to mask a trauma, which was domestic violence, which I had never experienced either in my life. And all those things, from losing my sobriety after so many years, plus losing my career, plus my family falling apart, plus experiencing domestic violence for the first time, all those things aren't things that you can really talk to people about, and if you are honest about those things, then you get punished for it. People aren't very accepting of domestic violence. I was a nurse. I fell in this bracket. I felt like I should have known better, but yet I didn't know anything at all about all that stuff. And so I was judged, in between there somewhere. And professionally, in my family, there was no addiction, no domestic violence that I was raised around. My dad was an addict, but he was never in my life until I was in my 20s. So it was very hard to be honest with myself or with other people, and that just led to further spiraling. Then DCBS, like they didn't support that. It was black and white, like this one way. And I've learned that everybody has, a past that looks different from everybody else's. So their emotions, their perception, their emotions, how they react with those and stuff, it all looks different from family to family. And in the DCBS world, like they have like this protocol they go by, and you can't go by that. And nobody's really asking the questions to really give people help or healing or support, because it's just, well, if mom drank and drove, we do this, 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 and this. But nobody's asking, well, what made mom drink and drive? Why is
Yeah.
mom getting charges all of a sudden? Why did mom's life fall apart? So I think it's
Thanks
very
for
important to ask how we can help instead of just seeing it as a protocol and going through the motions without even knowing what's causing all of it.
Thanks for that insight, Carla. I think what Sharmika was referencing too, and I've heard from other people. Sharmika, if you want to jump in, please do. I dropped that guide that you had mentioned at some point into the chat. It sounds like social workers who are working with families can play a role in trying to support connection with kids and in many other ways.
Yeah, it's very challenging. They can play a role, but then also I think just like Carla explained, they can also be just focused on, okay, did I do this? Check,
We
check,
might have
check,
lost we
Can you
might
hear
have
me
lost
still?
you there. If you can if
Oh,
you can share that last part again, please.
oh, okay. So no, I was saying that it can be very challenging. Some social workers can be very instrumental with making sure those families are staying connected. But then you also have social workers that are really just focused on the policies. Like, what am I
Mhm,
supposed to step one, step two, step three, as Carla
mhm.
mentioned. And so it's no, I guess you can't really blame anybody on either side, but I do think and agree that there is a disconnect there, and there needs to be someone that's specifically there to make sure families are staying connected, if at all possible.
That sounds great. I know we've heard from some folks that court orders, for example, might specify that visiting is allowed, but it's to take place in certain locations. And then if a parent's incarcerated, they have to go through the process of changing the court order. So that's just something to consider too. Can court orders around visiting be general enough, careful enough to protect the child's safety and make sure that things are done appropriately, but also broad enough to allow for some flexibility about where a visit might occur? I hate to do this, but it's time to wrap up the panel. And so I'd like to invite Jacoby and Eric and Carla to maybe just share one last thing. If you could go back in time and tell people what would have been helpful to you, or if you want to share something else that you would like people to know for kids coming through and dealing with the system now, what would you like people on this call to know that we should be doing or should be trying to do as a community?
As a community, I feel like, especially growing up, when I was with being around people that you love. I'm gonna go back to sports. Like I said, sports, a commitment, something I can commit to, something like teamwork. That had a goal, that had, everybody was on the same page. It really like trained what I say, sharpened my mind in a way. And I feel like from now on, going through and today, I feel like, because I know a program called Boss Not Bangers that deals with like kids that's been incarcerated, and he teach them into it, and we kind of partner with him, but he's a nonprofit. So like I feel like being a part of something like those types of organizations, and it's being a part. It's being a part. Being a part.
Thank you. Eric and Carla, do you all have anything to add?
I think seeing people as humans and not just, their mistakes, seeing past their mistakes and not judging them by the mess you walk in on.
I agree with both of them. I mean, I'm on both sides of it. I know what's helped me, and I see what helps my kids about being part of that community, a strong community, um, with like-minded goals, and also seeing the parent as the especially incarcerated parent. They need to see that people is trying to give them a second chance. That this ain't the end of the road. You can still be a parent. So
Thank you all so much for sharing and enlightening us and giving us some guidance. I'm going to turn it over to Judy now, who's going to talk about specific ways people in local communities can step up and take action.
Right. Am I Okay. Hey, great. Oh, that panel was really, you all said it all, and it's so important to hear from people with direct experience and have been through it. But also with the help of the Kentucky Social Welfare Foundation, Louisville Family Justice Advocates has put together a guide for community action, uh, keeping families connected. And you can see it there with wonderful artwork, because we believe that art is really powerful. And it is a great way to communicate with positive images. And also, making art together is actually part of your core skills in strengthening core skills in Harvard development, child development, 3 principles, because you have to plan what you're going to write. Well, you don't plan it, but you think about what you want to portray, and then you carry it through. So that is really an actual way of being successful with making art. So we don't actually tell you what to do, because every community is different. And this is how I found out when we were working with Kentucky Youth Advocates and Louisville Family Justice Advocates. That's how we found out about Wonderland of Hope. And also Wanda Joyce Robinson Foundation in Frankfurt are 2 great examples that are featured in our guide. So you can see how those communities are acting together as a community to support families, children, and incarcerated people. It's really a tough, it's tough right now, and it's a tough time to talk about incarceration with all the ways that's happening. And so we really need to have positive language like they give us in the toolkit, but we also are going to have to figure out what we want to do at the community level, like I said. So we're going to have a community and a convening at the end of May. We'll get the actual date out, but it's the early in the week before Memorial Day, where we want to bring people together that already know that they want to do something. We're going to try to actually reach everybody, but I think that right now the time is to have where we can learn from folks like Wanda Johnson, WJRF and KSWF and Wonderland of Hope, and look at how we can assess our communities where we might be able to change. Do you all already know the jail policies around parents in your community? Do they have access to free phone calls, for example? Do they have access to any kind of visiting? I think people that aren't affected directly don't know that information, and who in the community controls that information. Communities are still very powerful in the 120 counties across Kentucky. Your county judge or your county prosecutor, whatever, who can make a difference. That might be in I've heard from Wendy in Perry County in Hazard, it's the jailer. Well, what's his title, Wendy, real quick? Regional director, is that what his title is?
Administrative director.
Yeah, jail administrator.
Yeah. And he is a great guy who worked in juvenile justice before he became, and so he really believes in especially working with the kids. So he can make a big difference. And so who can make a difference in that you all might be able to reach in the community or talk to and start to see what can be accomplished in your community. And a lot of times, as you can see, the smaller communities have more access to the people in power. They might not like all the people in the power, but they can access them. And then in the big cities, because we have multiple layers of power in our cities. So we want to just keep it simple. And our guide is only like less than 7 or 8 pages. It's asking a lot of questions about what can you do in your community. So we hope that you'll want to come and join us when we get our date out. Well, I think, Tara, we can invite everybody on this call, can't we, directly?
We should be able to, and we can promote it through our channels where we put out this information as well.
Right. So we don't have the answers, but we have some examples. We have examples. We have language we can work together. But I really think it's going to take a village for us. Like Jacoby said, that we have to work together and learn from each other instead of having us say, "Oh, here's the formula." And if we need the social workers, if we all can get on the same page and talk about what's good for the kids and what Carla said is to affirm the humanity of people who are incarcerated and all of their families, because that really, we need to keep that uppermost because we hear a lot of bad press and bad media and things like that. So we need to, we're all human beings working together, and if you were in jail doesn't make you not a human being. So what Eric said exactly, so we just want to get together in a group of people that want to work together to see how we can do a better job in our local communities.
Indeed. I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Judy. I'd like to open it up to questions. If people have questions to drop in the chat, actually, that's how we would like to do it, so we can try and incorporate, and I'll make sure we get to the questions. But one person asked, how does a person or an organization get involved with the youth and the groups that are serving these youth? And so I know we've had Wanda Joyce Robinson Foundation drop information in. Wendy Hall has dropped information in about Wonderland of Hope. If there is anything, Judy, you would like to add, or Sharmika, about the Louisville Family Justice Advocates, please share.
Talented minds.
I would like to add to the organization I work for, Kentucky Partnership for Families and Children. We have family peer support specialists and youth peer support specialists. Unfortunately, the youth we don't see until they're 13, but that's still a big help because there's not a lot of platforms for youth that need somebody that can relate to them. They feel related, relatable to, because that's a big thing. If you feel like if somebody hasn't been through similar circumstances, you really don't feel like they understand. And that causes us to shut down a lot. I would like to see, more work with the younger youth, because I believe,
That's the key.
kids are traumatized and nobody's working on healing them. I mean, they're growing up angry and bitter, and they're lashing out and they're being punished for it. They're being sent to juvenile, which turns into them having a record going on to adult jail. But nobody's looking at why they're lashing out, the trauma informed care. And helping them to heal and support them and encourage them to help others in the same aspect. They can be support to their peers, and that helps them, just like we do
And
as adults.
And the younger we get them, the better it is. Because instead letting into them at the early age, that's gonna be needed. The later we just hold off on it, the more in stone is gonna be into their personality, into who they are. So, like you said, the youth, indeed.
You just tell them they're bad, and we punish them and we punish them, but we don't encourage or support them or help them to find healing.
Thank you for that. I think we have some more information about different programs that are taking place and contact information if you're interested in reaching out and connecting with any of these organizations. I think we are running up against time, and so I would like to just say thank you so much to everyone who spoke today. Thank you so much to the Kentucky Social Welfare Foundation for making this webinar possible and for making a lot of these resources possible. Especially to our panelists, thank you for providing that expertise and insight that you all have that is unique and so important for us to all hear.